All right, hello everybody. Welcome to our patch 4.10 balanced live stream. I'm very excited. We are streaming to both YouTube and Twitch today for the first time. We're experimenting. I have my eye on both of the chats, so hopefully I can catch all of the really good questions and answer anything that you guys want to know for this live stream. So let's go ahead and kick it right off. We are going to get right into these balance changes. Let's go ahead and let our designers introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves. Let's go ahead and start with Aaron. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. I am Aaron Barich. I'm a game designer here on Legends of Runeterra. You maybe know me from running the community card kitchen. I've also made a bunch of flex cards, worked on Fate's Voyage, was a member of that design team, and I'm helping design the first release of 2024. And I'm joined by my awesome co-lead, which is maybe not normal, but this patch has had a little bit of interesting history, so we have more people on this patch than normal. So thank you so much, John, for helping take over the patch and being an additional lead on it.
Yeah, happy to do it. Yeah, I'm John Mormon. I'm a game design manager on the team and also occasional game designer. I was co-set lead for World Walker in the Darken Saga, all those sets, and then I'm going to be lead designer on the second release of 2024, so coming up right after Aaron's set. We did have two more people who helped us work on this set, who aren't here with us today, but we're still going to brag about them.
Yeah, so we had Brian Koplek, who was my initial second to help me with this patch. Normally our patches are two people. He led, of course, Glory Navori and Heart of the Huntress. Coins Archetype did some awesome stuff. If you've played pretty much anything recently, you've certainly worked with Brian's work. We also have Paulo this time.
Yes, Paulo Vitor Domidarosa, who's new on the team, joined roughly 2 months ago, hasn't been design lead on anything yet. We're working on making that happen. But yeah, he's pretty good at other card games, and didn't want me to put that on the slide, but it's true.
Oh gosh. Okay, not to interrupt, but I'm trying to type in chat while you guys were giving your intros, and I realized that this mechanical keyboard is clicking and clacking so loudly that everybody can hear it. So maybe I'll refrain. Maybe I'll just talk to chat. Let's go ahead and get into the goals for this patch and what we're trying to do with all these changes.
Yeah, so I was the lead that started the patch, so I had set up kind of some initial goals, as we often do for patches. Of course, any standard balance patches nerfs to the overperformers of the current standard environment. We want to make sure the new cards weren't too unhealthy and try and bring things back down to a reasonable level. In addition to that, really for this one, we were looking at big monsters. You know, we just released Volibear and the Titanic and everything there, and we're trying to make a very concentrated effort to make these big monsters better, and this patch is a good time to go in and look at a couple of those. In addition to that, there's a lot of really cool sad epics that exist. As we're looking at using, rarity and stuff for like Path of Champions, it turns out that some of our more rare cards are actually just like kind of bad and not in like a fun way. They're just not fun or good, and no one really wants them, and that's just not a great place to be. So we wanted to take a look at all those and see if we could make getting an epic in Path of Champions or opening an epic in the game a more exciting thing. And in addition to that, we had an extra little cycle of, can we give a couple more anti-elusive tools to the game? We always see players frustrated that maybe their deck doesn't really have something to help fight elusives, or that feels like there's just something missing for that. So pushing a little bit on that whenever we can was definitely one of the things I wanted to do coming in.
So giving y'all a temperature check on chat, everyone shares the same sentiment that I have, the anti-elusive tools being a very welcome change. It's kind of fun getting, like writing the patch notes and getting to see the changes early, because I was very thankful for this too. So let's see what y'all have been cooking. Let's just start with the nerfs right away. Oh my gosh, I'm so thankful for this one. Please take it away.
Yeah, this is a nerf that I think will surprise basically no one. We are going to increase the cost of Warden of the Tribes back up to 9, kind of reverting a change we had made in a previous patch. Warden decks are meant to be kind of this, like, you pay a little bit of cost in deck building to develop this menagerie of subtypes, and then Warden lets you win the game. But honestly, like, the menagerie build that has been going around is just consistent enough that the penalty in deck building is not really like limiting the deck in the way that it should. So we wanted to push Warden back another turn, make you have to wait a little bit longer for that menagerie payoff to land and kind of take over the game. And secondarily, we've just kind of noticed that Innovative Blacksmith is a really important card for a lot of Freljord-based equipment decks and kind of like just Freljord in general, as a way to like stabilize the board, develop a lot of value, and kind of like put a decently sized body into play. So making that slightly weaker, we think the card will still like have a very strong role in Freljord decks, but not be quite as dominant.
Yeah, yeah. And I see you loud and clear, Matt. Thank you for the feedback. Some of the people in chat are also thinking that Warden at this cost is still going to be fair. Is that some of the thought behind why we're also hitting Blacksmith? People seem to be a little bit sad. They love the Blacksmith, but all things in balance.
We still think the Blacksmith is pretty good at these numbers. I don't think it actually takes it out of the game entirely. So I'm pretty certain Innovative Blacksmith will still play a role, and we would still like it to. And then in terms of the Warden change, we don't want to 100% kill the deck dead. Like, I think it does create an interesting deck building challenge and like push you to play some cards you wouldn't normally play alongside like other Freljord mid-range decks or Freljord Demacia mid-range decks. So we didn't want to just like nuke it from orbit. We wanted to instead try and contain it a little bit and leave the door open in case it needs to be dealt with in a future patch.
Yeah, I just want to say in particular, part of the goal for the patch was making big plays, more big plays, something people want to do. So just increasing Warden and keeping it awesome and powerful is much more of like what we want to do with big monsters rather than, make them weaker and less cool. No, just make them cost a little more and still be as sweet as possible.
That's a really good point.
Let's go on to the next one. I think this might make maybe Sunny a little sad and some others, but
I think if Wildfire is what's making you sad, that's probably what you're doing to some other people. I'll admit it. So Wildfire, is one of those cards from Fate's Voyage where we wanted to give kind of some of the off regions cool tools to play with all the card draw, like Wildfire or Bursting Backpack, and they were kind of supposed to be, decks that people could play, but maybe weren't meta breakers. And Wildfire's definitely been crushing our metrics. Way more powerful and kind of uninteractive than we really want a spell-based like kill to be. Bursting Backpack a little healthier in that regard. So definitely just trying to slow down Wildfire, make it where if you build your deck entirely around them, hopefully this will cost you an extra turn or two by, if you play 5 of these in a game, that's plus 5 extra mana. That's a lot.
A lot of people are sending their condolences to Wick. It's quite crazy because you see two types of people in chat. People are celebrating this, very, very happy, and some people are very, very sad. So I can tell who has been abusing this card based on their Twitch and YouTube comments.
Yeah, I will say that I don't think the card is dead. It is still very powerful, and it still does its thing. You still play 6 Wildfires in a game, and that's 21 damage. Just because it's a little slower, that's still going to win games.
Yeah. Let's move on in. I'm pretty sure that one of our producers, Greg, will be sad about this, but...
Poor Greg.
Yeah, poor Greg. Yeah, so we've also seen Lurk putting up pretty gaudy numbers recently, in spite of being a deck that hasn't changed a lot in the past couple years. One of the major spikes that they have is this ability to use Pike's Death from Below to kind of take over, and, like, put a big swing on the board and really change things up. We think like Lurk's general play pattern is its own thing. There are a lot of people who absolutely love it, and we don't want to just, remove the deck from the game entirely, but kind of reducing their reliance on some of these champions may actually be healthier for the deck as a whole.
All right. Sounds good. Let's keep this nerf train going. Let's see what else is our next stop.
This one is a long time coming. People have been calling for some changes to Jaceheimer for as long as that deck has been popular, which has been a pretty long while at this point. Yeah. Forever. So that's what we're doing here. We have 2 nerfs. One is to Epic Scrap Traption, making the token Runaway Scrap Trap lose Brash. That is a card that even non-Jace decks were playing sometimes to just make a 6/6 Brash on round 3, and it kind of led to more non-games than we were hoping. So we're cleaning that off, maybe making it just more of a Jace card, or a deck that wants to play big spells runs this. And Hextech Handler is the much more direct nerf to Heimer Jace, taking off that health buff for all the tech. It would happen where games would be you play 2 of these, the turrets are all X3s, you had a lot of removal turns off on them, and playing against Heimer at that point became really hard or frustrating, or even when not Heimer, playing I can't remember the name of the spell that summons all the turrets for all of your mana. Why can't I remember the
Production
name?
Surge, yeah.
Production Surge, that one. So playing Production Surge after a couple Hextech handlers and just really filling the board with turrets and stuff could be rather painful to play against. So we're making it where that small ping removal is, again, a little bit better against them and open up more avenues of attack there.
A lot of chat is actually in agreement with this, which is funny to me because I see a lot of Heimer Jace on the ladder. So the fact that people who are playing Heimer Jace are like, okay, fair, all right, that kind of speaks volumes to me.
Yeah, Heimer Jace is one of those decks that's lasted far longer than most decks without avoiding like a pretty serious nerf. So.
Yeah, it's been around for a while. All right, here's the next one. I have conflicting feelings about this one, but I'll let y'all talk about it.
Yeah, Watchful Idol is a tough card. Basically, like, we know that this deck is pretty key to Alawi strategies working. This card is pretty key to Alawi strategies working. Being able to start that Tentacle on round 1 is pretty huge for the Spawn deck. But at the same time, leaving it at 5 health was basically giving you a 3/3 for 1 mana investment, even if it was like slow and over time, that then also like interacted well with all your other cards. And secondarily, this was also really boosting Swain and kind of keeping him in a spot where it was tough to actually make Swain outside of Alawi decks work well. We think making this change allows us to like let Alawi still play, and then we can kind of see the impact that it has on those secondary decks and make moves based off of these changes.
All right, sounds fair enough. I'm still sad to lose the 1 tentacle, but you know, for the greater good of the game, I will accept it.
I can tell you from playtesting, Watchful Idol on 1 is still really good.
All right, next, Sting Officer.
Yeah, Sting Officer. We were looking for things to change within the elusive strategies that have been popping back up again. And honestly, that deck's pretty hard to nerf. There's a lot of cards that are already just 1 mana 1/1s, and there's not a lot of numbers to move on those. So we looked at Sting Officer, a card that was always supposed to be a traps card, but was never as good in that deck because it often died to small ping removal. So we made it a 1/2 here, hoping that that gives the elusive decks a little less aggression, give them maybe a little more texture with 1 unit that's got a little more health, and actually makes this card better in the traps archetype because it's going to survive longer to give you 1 or 2 extra Nexus strikes, maybe actually get you some traps planted, when before it often would come into play and die and you just wouldn't get anything out of that deck.
So
it's also sneaky really good at stopping Teemo now, so yeah.
A lot of people in chat really feel like this is more of a buff. Does this feel more like a balancing for y'all on the design team? Like, how do you feel about this change, like in terms of power level change?
I think it makes the card a little different. It is a card that is going to be better in some games because it does have 2 health. It won't die to small removal in quite the same way. But in a deck like Elusives, the problem wasn't that small removal, like your small removal is still going to be very good. They play a ton of units that die to things like Pytos. So having 1 that survives that's also kind of a smaller 1/2 unit just puts less pressure on. It might be better in some cases, but I think overall it's going to be a bit worse.
Cool. And I think in general, like, we're pretty excited to try out nerfs that feel less like they're just raw nerfs. It's not as exciting when you just bump a number off of something and it just gets strictly worse because it doesn't really generate more ways to use the card. But if we have an opportunity, like with this one, to maybe make it worse in a deck where we feel like it's creating an imbalance in the meta, but maybe make it stronger in a deck that isn't as well represented, that actually like helps generate more creative options for players going forward.
Definitely. All right, sounds good to me. Oh, this next one makes me sad, but I think is necessary.
Yeah, the large cloudy boy, Exalted Cloudwinder, has been really performing well since coming out with Janna, and we knew that Janna's package needed like a little bit of an adjustment somewhere. So we looked at a lot of different cards and felt like this was a good place where it brings the card back in line, but it's still drawing you 2 cards at the next round start. It's still getting its cost reduced. Like, it does plenty even with slightly less attack.
Yeah.
I just want to say this is part of an effort to playing against that deck. One of the problems was always it's really hard to block because quick attack plus burn spells make it where, a 3/2 quick attack is almost unblockable. Bring it down to a 2/2 means you're a little more likely to be able to make some blocks on it and not feel like your unit's going to die before you get to deal damage.
All right, sounds good. Let's keep this train going because we have a lot of balance changes today, y'all.
Oh, Balin the Benevolent. He was so benevolent that he buffed himself, which is not quite how benevolence works. But we have changed that. Now he's only going to grant other formidable allies the buff. Balin, incredibly powerful, formidable card, kind of made formidable into an archetype almost single-handedly. His ability to just kind of stick around and play and grow his own health makes it where it often was really hard to take him off the board. And that's kind of not something we want for cards that give an everywhere buff every single round. We want you to be able to block and trade with them, and if you want multiple buffs off of it, you really need to work for it. So hopefully this will kind of lower its ability to just run away with the game by itself on round 4.
Yeah, sounds good. And this one also hurts my soul, but let's just get to it.
Yeah, this was one that kind of came in a little later. We were definitely finding that Valley of Imitation, coming down on 3, was just curving a little too easily into all of the various like transform synergy cards. We think adding 1 extra cost here like makes you make some more choices in that deck about like which thing that synergizes super well with your transforms are you going to play on a given turn. It's definitely a card that we think is a lot of fun and does some really interesting stuff, but was just coming down a little too fast to be healthy.
Oh, a lot of the Nidalee enjoyers are quite sad, and I'm sad because it's, you know, obviously this is Chip right here, you know, the imitation of Chip, but it had to happen. So let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get into it.
Here we have just a change that, you know, some people probably saw coming as well. Beguiling Cobra, changing it from being the first unit you summon each round to the first unit you play each round. Beguiling Cobra had quite a few ways to go infinite in the back row with some things, including our Valley of Imitation friend there. And that was just definitely overshadowing the other things the card could do, or like cool setups. And if you were going to play Beguiling Cobra, why wouldn't you play the combo? It's just kind of not what we intended the card to be doing. So we're going to pull back on that, and hopefully people will play it in some other places.
All right, let's get on to the next nerf, Swindle.
Swindle's been a card that's been really potent ever since it's been released, partly just for the amount of information that it gives you. You can kind of like slap it into most decks that have the ability to activate the Plunder, and then being able to know 3 of the non-champion cards in your opponent's hand really sets you up to make extremely strong choices going forward. Cutting it back to 2 choices means you're like getting a less useful card some percentage of the time, but you're also just getting less things that you know to play around. Makes it a bit less headbendy to be on either side of Swindle, and hopefully tones the card back slightly.
There's someone in chat named Vinicius Luigi said, "Y'all are really coming for me, huh? I promise we're coming for the meta. It's not targeted at you, but if you play mostly meta cards."
I am coming just for them, actually. I looked at all of their match results. It's a vendetta.
Day 1 of the patch, Aaron is like, Vinicius Luigi, that is our target.
That's it. Right there. I didn't put that on the slide, but just know.
Well, I guess so. The truth's coming out. Oh man. Oh no, this next one is one of my highest mastery champions. I think this is one of Majin Bei's highest mastery. Let's look at it.
A couple people's highest mastery champion, probably, if we're being honest. Yeah, Samira. I mean, what has not been said about Samira? This is like her 4th time on one of these dev streams, I think, getting talked about. Yeah, so we are finally kind of pulling the Band-Aid off. Samira's Flare is going up to 2, and her champ itself is going to reduce the cost of your flares when you strike to make it where they will cost reduce over time. But you're not going to have that round 2 play of, you know, I play the Samira, I flare my Samira, I challenge your 2-drop. That would happen a lot and would make a lot of 2-mana units that don't have 3 health not feel very good to play. Flare still being 2 means you can still do that in the later game and play her and challenge a thing, but we just really want to open up that early game to more units that have the ability to not just die to her and see more play.
Yeah. Well, let's get right into some buffs. I know nerfs can be kind of hard to stomach, but let's talk about the Titanic units.
Yeah, so as Aaron mentioned before, with the release of the most recent set, we have a lot of Titanic synergy things happening, and we realized there's a bunch of big units from older sets that are like just on the verge of being Titanic, and might be helped if we gave them a little bit of an extra oomph. So yeah, we gave an extra power to the Zondiva, buffed up the clock hand, I believe, by +1/+1, and then same for Savage Reckoner, and then gave an extra health to Sejuani's boat, the Tusk Raider. We think for all of these, like, it just kind of makes them an extra consideration for any deck that's already playing Sigils of the Storm and other Titanic benefits. And, you know, maybe we'll open up some different avenues for those types of decks.
Okay, I have a random question from a non-designer perspective, but I'm thinking of like Clash of Titans. Does adding more Titanic units kind of diluting the pool of like those really, really nice units to hit, is this like a slight theoretical nerf to it by having some of these other, I guess maybe less game-changing Titanic units in the pool?
I mean, yeah, fine math, yeah. It's not the intent of it. There's a lot of other stuff you can do with it, but yeah, anything that pulls from a large pool like that is going to have kind of secondary effects from any of these types of changes.
I've just seen a couple of Reddit posts talking about of people mauling after someone hits a really nice Clash of Titans. All right, let's go on to more buffs. More buffs.
All right, more Titanic units. These ones a little fancier. We've added a couple play effects to Wrath of the Freljord and to Otacon, Bringer of Ruin. Really want to make these big plays do something, be more exciting. Wrath of the Freljord. Now, Frostbite's a thing, making it where it can attack through the turn it comes in, which is pretty awesome. And Otacon now has a play effect that revives your strongest dead ally, meaning where, you know, Otacon has always had a problem historically of you play it and it gets Will of Ionia or Vengeance and your 10 drop just kind of doesn't do anything, and that's pretty lame. So now if it does get killed or recalled, you'll get something on the board and hopefully not just die immediately. Eldred, Mage Seeker Leader, now gives a buff to your units whenever they survive damage, hopefully opening up this card to have decks you can build around it. Previously it was just kind of a neat card, but there wasn't really a deck there. Just giving your Nexus Tough isn't enough of a draw. Maybe now you can play with some of the other Scars cards from Freljord or Noxus and really make something cool.
People are very excited about Otacon. People are very, very happy about this. It's funny. One of the Reddit posts I mentioned was about Otacon being pulled in Clash of Titans.
Yeah. I'm going to point this out just to show that we were paying attention to Clash of Titans. Otacon is explicitly a play effect, just so it wouldn't trigger if you summed it off Clash of Titans, because we already knew that was one of the strongest things you could hit.
Cool.
We also knew that, like, normally we would do that at a summon speed, but yeah, this is not one that we felt okay giving you for free on Clash of Titans.
See, y'all are always one step ahead. All right, let's go to the Berserker Ursine.
Yeah, so Berserker Ursine has definitely been one of the weaker cards coming out from the latest expansion, just at 5/3. It has a very potent ability to kind of just print Sigils of the Storm. We were a little cautious with it when it came out, possibly too cautious, you know, we'll see. So we wanted to give him a little more stats back so you actually might be able to live that printer dream and be able to do something interesting.
All right, cool. There's certain memes about the Clash of Titans card that people are talking about in chat, and I need to stop reading. It's too funny. Okay, let's go to other buffs before I get distracted.
All right, we're gonna start here with one of those elusive tech tools. This is the most important one I think we put in the patch. We have given Omen Hawk the ability to block elusives. There was a lot that went into this decision. You know, what regions should have can't block elusives, what size of unit should have it. You know, I think blocking Badger Bear does it really, really well, and we wanted a smaller unit that kind of is able just to trade off and give you a little bit of game against elusives, and one that you're just kind of willing to play in a generic Freljord Unity deck. And Omen Hawk seemed like a prime candidate for that. And also, I mean, it just makes sense for the Omen Hawk to be able to see what's going to happen. Duh.
Chat is losing their collective mind over this change. I'm gonna go back and look at like the analytics, and there's gonna be a giant spike, and that's gonna be when we got to this slide. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think comparing this with blocking Badger Bear is really interesting because, like, Badger Bear can end up brickwalling an elusives deck just because of the high health. In playing with this Omen Hawk change, it does a really good job of slowing them down without completely negating their game plan, which we think is a really, like, strong place for this ability in the future. It's not as potent as Badger Bear. Obviously, Badger Bear is extremely good at, you know, stopping that particular strategy. But this is a nice way for us to give kind of like a lower maybe put this ability out in the world more frequently without it just invalidating elusive strategies entirely.
Yeah. Let's get into some more buffs. Let's go.
All right. We have a couple spells that are moving up to a faster speed. I'll start with Called Shot first, because this one is mostly just, it's been slow. There's no particular reason for it to be slow. So we felt like in order to like modernize the card and keep it in line with our current design policies, it made more sense at Focus. And in playing with it, it kind of like lets the deck play out a little more smoothly, but we don't think it probably moves Called Shot into like automatic include territory at a base level in an Echo deck. But possibly the more spicy one is Exhaust moving to Burst. So Exhaust is a card that at Focus speed felt like it ought to be good, but never quite made it over the line, partly because it was really only usable as an offensive trick. And there's so many other vulnerable giving options and like power reducing options that having it be limited to only use on offense made the card feel very limited and just like didn't make the cut in most decks. We think that moving this to Burst lets you actually use this as a better tool in other matchups. It's already been pretty decent in anti-elusive matchups where you can kind of like pick off their small elusive unit on your turn. But this also lets you pay a smaller penalty to have it in other matchups, which just makes Exhaust more likely to show up in decks, which then hopefully gives Shurima a little more game against elusives since they can already bring their best tool with them without like losing too much win percentage elsewhere.
Yeah, I love the fact too that it thematically Exhaust. Exhaust is iconic. I mean, one of the summoner spells from League. I love that it's hopefully going to get some more play. So let's go ahead. Ooh, this one's exciting.
If you are like me, it took far too long to realize what the title was. This is one of John's. So the
That's
elemental decks, yeah, the elemental decks, and especially the Freljord elemental package was something that was maybe came out a little weaker than we wanted. Flamecaller Caprine was definitely one of those units that we were worried about in initial dev. I mean, a tough unit that scales its health is really powerful and can be really hard to remove. But a little weaker than we wanted, so let's give it that ability back. Now it has 3 health and tough. Not a ton of things are going to remove it the round it comes into play, and it doesn't give your opponent a lot of time to interact with it before it really scales into a game ender. Hopefully giving those Freljord elemental decks a little bit of that stronger early to mid game that we want.
Heck yeah. All right, now this next one, this 3 punches for 1 card.
Yeah, the Knuckle Mako Bull. These 3 have been kind of they've always been intended as like the big payoff for the Bilgewater coin stack, but didn't quite end up landing, partly because of the like distribution of keywords on Mako and Bull, where Brash being a elusive keyword that's a little bit better when the board's a little more limited, ending up on the biggest unit, and then Overwhelm being on the mid-sized unit meant that your like big payoff turn often didn't result in lethal damage, which is kind of disappointing for the deck and tends to lose you games. So we think this change is like pretty interesting, both for when you're ready to go for the full combo, have a big Overwhelm threat to actually capitalize on that rally. But also if you're going to go for the mid-sized combo slightly earlier in the game, kind of like play a value Knuckle Mako or something like that, the Brash is actually like extremely useful if you can drop it early on. So we think it gives the card a lot more flexibility.
Cool. All right, I need to type something and my keyboard's going to be loud, so I'm going to talk over it while I'm typing.
So smooth, Julie.
Yes. It's no, this is all
no
planned.
One's noticing. It's fine.
No one noticed. Okay, cool. All right, now I'm going to go to the next slide. One of the best cards, thematically.
Oh, yeah, everyone loves old Babs. Giving her Attune, we took off power. She'll get that power back from the Attune immediately. This is always one of my favorite cards from the set's release with Jack and everything and the mana refilling. Never quite splashed, so hopefully kind of making it cost half a less mana will give it a little more room to be played in some of those tempo spell decks that we see.
Awesome.
I think we're all rooting for Babs, and yeah, I like it a lot as well in Dev.
Oh gosh, the meme buff now. Okay.
All right, so this is kind of a long story, so we'll start you through this. We looked back at Brash Gambler, which is this Bilgewater card from like set 2, and we knew there was something missing from this card. It didn't feel complete, like it didn't really like match the idea of what the name was. So we looked at a bunch of different options for this one. Jules, you can go to the first one. First, we considered like giving it Overwhelm as a keyword and seeing what that would look like and whether or not the that would be enough, but it wasn't quite. So we tried another keyword. We tried Challenger. to see if that really like made it sing, but still something felt off about the card. So we went to quick attack next, I believe. Yeah, it still didn't quite read right. Plus, it's like a bit of a stretch for Bilgewater. So we tried some negatives even just to see if it was like overpowered. That didn't quite work. We tried, moving it into other regional, themes to see if it could maybe play in other Bilgewater decks, and lurkers just didn't really want it. And the next one, even with the name, it still wasn't throwing away enough cards to make deep decks want it. We even tried seeing if it like belonged maybe in Freljord, but this was terrible. I do not recommend that card. So eventually we just came back to the original idea and just gave it Brash. Yeah.
Whew, I was not ready for all that. Was good. All right. Yeah, so Brash Gambler, when the name says it, you should just move in. Brash Gambler are actually going to give Brash. This card's been sweet for a long time. Hasn't seen play in a long time. Maybe what's in a name? Maybe it'll be good now.
Y'all are too much. Let's go. Let's keep going.
Speaking of things that maybe were incorrect initially, the King's Court is a boat. The community believes boats should draw champions, and we disappointed you. And I think everyone kind of agreed that maybe that was a mistake, and we should really commit to the idea that boats draw champions. Jack definitely needs a boat that draws him. So, Jack fans, your boat is finally here.
Okay, wait.
We did have a detailed internal discussion about whether or not the King's Court is technically a submarine, and thus it shouldn't draw Jack, but we figured this is...
I was going to ask if you thought... I was going to just bring it up because people are always arguing over ships or boats, and I was going to be, it's kind of a submarine, but you beat me to it, John. I should have told you before the stream that I planned on doing it.
One step ahead. That's what you said, Julian.
It's okay. I'm sure I have like a good joke somewhere in the rest of this stream. All right, let's go to the next buff.
All right. One more thing that we just did wrong. All right, the Portal Pioneer. That maybe looks like a Yordle. Okay, I'm gonna admit it. So that's just kind of what happens sometimes when we're designing cards, right? When we made the Pioneer cycle, the Explorer cycle, this wasn't initially a Yordle in our plans. But the art came back, and obviously no one ever looked at the card, looked at the art, and just kind of realized that maybe it should be. So we're fixing that now, which is really awesome. I actually do think adding the Yordle tag to this is pretty sweet. It's a multi-region card, has some good utility, and maybe you can make it off of the Yordle generators. It'd be pretty awesome.
Praise be to Erin. She came in to fix any of our previous mistakes and sins and grant Yordle to the Portal Pioneer. So we appreciate you.
Section.
All right,
Speaking of Yordles, we also felt like the Yordle aggro deck had been lacking a little bit. There's still a lot of tools available, but it's kind of just fallen behind other things. So we wanted to take another look at Yordle Explorer. This is a card that, since its initial rebalancing just like really has never shown back up again. We think giving it a little extra health means it'll stick around on the board and actually, buff some other Yordles occasionally, as opposed to just, having text that it doesn't get to use because it dies too fast.
Some people in chat are saying, well, on the topics of Yordle, it's a little scary. They're getting some Vandal City PTSD.
Yeah.
All right, let's assuage some fears.
All right, we'll use the Cry Phoenix. It's a great card against a bunch of little Yordles. Look at that. We are changing this card to have the Enlightened buff only deal damage to your opponent's units. The fact that when this card was Enlightened and you had your 10 mana and you often were, at parity on board or a little ahead, not very exciting to play it. Hopefully now this just makes it feel a little better when you actually get into a late game with your sweeper effects where they normally kind of fall off.
There's a fun thematic thing here too, where like most Freljord AoE effects hit both sides of the board, but not Anivia's attack effect. So maybe there's a little thematic connection too.
I see you. Okay. All right, next to Shark Trainer.
Yeah, we also took a look at Shark Trainer here. It used to be that this would spend mana when you attacked, which most often just resulted in you forgetting that you hadn't gotten yourself spell mana, or like you overspent your spell mana and then you don't get your Shark and you're very sad. And Shark Trainer is like definitely not a card that has been too strong and required that kind of penalty. Also, as a side note, that penalty was one of the like edge cases we always had to check whenever we released new cards that cared about spell mana, because it's like one of the weirdest times at which you can spend mana. So this was kind of just a buff that's a win for literally everybody on the team. So
Cool. All right, let's keep on trucking along.
All right, we have some of those cool epics that have always been kind of bad. We're adding a little bit to them. We have the Harrowing Return, now going to revive the unit with Fearsome. It was always cool to revive Fearsome units because it gives that minus power to the enemy team. But now, no matter what you're getting back, it'll have that Fearsome, and maybe it'll get to get in for an extra hit a little more often. On top of that, Haunted Tube, just losing a mana, going to go down to 2 cost. The time delay and the setup and stuff required for Haunted 2 made it pretty hard to play, round 6 alongside another thing you really needed to play. So now hopefully it's a little easier to fit into your curve once you're ready to revive whatever the exciting thing is there.
I realized I cut off there you go. You can see the -1 cost. Whoop, 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 whoop. You see nothing. Here you go.
All right, we have the Generous Gem Crafter here as well. Another card that we think is like a really exciting engine card that just didn't quite have the stats on board to justify the delay required for like what she gives you. Moving her up to a 3-mana 3/3 makes her a little more at parity with things that you'll normally be playing on those rounds. Lets you not pay quite as large a penalty for this like future investment in your hand buffing.
Cool, pretty straightforward. All right, next up.
We've Consult the Heavens. This is a card that's always been really cool, but we never really saw a ton of decks trying to play it. Now we're changing it to a team buff. It is slow now to compensate for being such a more powerful effect, but now your big butts deck can fill the board and actually get a huge payoff and kill them with all of those bubble bears you've been so excited to play, as we all know.
A lot of what spams in chat. Soraka's back, baby. All right.
Yeah, this is a buff that I had a lot of... we basically worked on a lot of different angles to try and bring Scion back towards the forefront a little bit, and try and give that deck a little bit of a boost. And one of the things that we realized is that Noble Rebel was kind of not fitting into the actual strategy of that deck. It didn't really want a small Overwhelm unit in most cases. That leaned more towards like the older discard aggro type of decks, which have enough other options that they weren't really interested in Noble Rebel either. And we also realized that I believe it's Lost Soul, the like infinite discard unit, that had Challenger at one point, and we ended up rebalancing it to Fearsome because giving you infinite Challenger units was a bit too much. Since that changed, the Scion deck really struggled to kind of control the board earlier. So we moved the Challenger onto Noble Rebel as an option for that deck to really like slow down the game, let their more value-based discard game plan come to fruition, and then become like a pretty sizable removal tool once you've actually discarded a couple cards.
Awesome. John, I think there's one more buff that you need to talk about here.
I have to be responsible for this one. I promise this is not a vanity buff for myself, in spite of my Twitter avatar. But we did feel like Deep needed a little bit more strength in the early game, and found that like buffing Megatusk's health becomes a really strong blocker at that point and really helps slow you down to the point where you can actually hit Deep. I'm very happy with this one.
So for full context for everybody, John's avatar is the Megatusk on like everything. So John is a self-proclaimed Megatusk fanboy. So you know what? It's okay. If I was in your position too, I would use that power.
Look at his eyes. His eyes are perfect.
I just got to call out too. So I made the slide title here first, and then John came back, and his response to the slide title was "add the 9 nerfs." It wasn't any shame. It was like, oh yeah, absolutely, that's what this is.
Like, if we had a Walrus Champ, I would put the Walrus Champ sticker in there, but the closest we've got is a Manatee, so it's just sea mammals rise up, you know?
If we get one, I think we know who will be responsible. And let's go to the next buff.
All right, Eclectic Collection, -1 cost. This is one of those cards that's always been really fun, and resolving it is really fun to watch, watching all the traps and boons fly into people's deck. But 7 mana was just a lot, and it was hard to play. Hopefully you can see a little more play here at 6 mana.
All right. And it's funny, so with all of this targeted, elusive toolkit, a lot of people are saying buff Teemo. I'm not sure this is what they meant, but we have something.
This is a huge buff for Teemo that will definitely impact every game he's played in. This is mostly kind of a buff for Howling Abyss edge cases and more frequently like Path of Champions, where sometimes you just end up with a level 2 Teemo that doubles the 0 puff caps in the enemy deck and does absolutely nothing. We wanted to make him slightly less useless when he shows up in those cases, so we've moved it to a 5 minimum puff cap. It's possible for this to show up in constructed games if something really weird happens and your opponent draws a lot of puff caps early, but for the most part, it's just for those things.
If it shows up in a real game and it causes you to lose, please send your complaints to @RiotIamWalrus.
Yes,
love
please
to
do.
hear about it.
I want to take just a second to go on a little aside. So we actually did an interview with Dan Felder from the Path of Champions team and the Real Prism Sword. And one of the things that he brought up in the interview was like, so for you who haven't checked it out, you can potentially get some like level 2 champions in Path with Aurelion Soul. Go check out the interview, The Real Prism Sword. It's on YouTube. I think they also have it on Twitch. And they made a comment like, oh, Teemo would be kind of useless just coming out as level 2. Can't double those puff caps. So when I saw this, it made me smile. So once again, go check out that interview. Awesome content.
You should also say, if you do lose to this and you want to complain, send your complaints to me. But if you like this change and you're happy about it, Brian Koplek was the one who brought it up. I think it was a really good call.
He's got that path brain. All right, let's keep going.
Yeah,
Kayn. Now, Kayn's champ spell, pretty powerful already, but we've decided to take it down to -1 cost to put it down to 3. Kayn has suffered a bit after some of the changes we've made to the cultist stuff and the level ups, and just over time has fallen off a little bit. So we want to give him a really small boost that just makes him a little more exciting. This makes it where you can play your Kayn into your Shadow Step a little more frequently and get that really powerful 1-2 punch. And hopefully can bring Kayn back into the metagame just a little bit.
There's also kind of a bug fix that will end up buffing Kayn a good bit. The momentous choice has not been reducing its cost properly. I believe the fix for that is in this upcoming patch.
A lot of
That's
people.
the biggest news.
I think my favorite comment was from Captain Sarah, who this whole stream she's been like, "Let them cook." Yes, good change. Captain Sarah was like, "Whoa! Let's slow down now. Let's think about this one." We'll see how it plays out. All right, what else do we have here?
So we've done a bunch of recall changes for this as well, kind of looking at some various things. First is Children of the Forest. This is a spell that when it originally cost, I think it was like 8 mana, isn't it?
8.
Yeah, it's 8. It was just the 8 mana version of this modal card, where basically it would summon the 3 strongest things you've recalled all game. It's a very potent effect, but like at 8 mana and then asking you to kind of like play the recall game plan, it never really panned out. So we made it into a modal option that lets you recall an ally for 2 mana, which is a little under rate, or spend the 8 mana for the big finishing move. I think this is a really cool and like skill testing card in terms of it lets you do things early on if you don't want to wait for the mana, but the card also sort of incentivizes you to consider like recalling your opponent's big things. So it isn't just strictly another piece that just slots into Ari Kennen without thinking about it. So I'm really excited about this one. I'm bragging about it a lot because Aaron was the one who pitched the change, I believe, for this. And she did a
I
great
just
job.
changed it so when you generate it mid-game, it's not totally useless. You're welcome.
We also added one more power to Liminal Guardian, which you'll see off 9 lives, which don't be worried if you didn't know that, because I don't think most players have ever resolved that card. It's a burst blocker, which is kind of potent and makes the 4 power like really notable, but we still wanted to make sure it stayed fragile so it doesn't become too strong at like, shifting your board presence after it comes in and blocks something. And then lastly, we have Singular Will, which used to cost 10 mana and now costs 9. This is still a really expensive effect for a really potent effect, but taking a little bit of numbers off of it will hopefully move that epic from something that you would absolutely never cast to something that maybe like becomes a slightly more interesting edge case option for an Ionia deck looking for mass removal.
Awesome. So this is all hinting towards our last change. Let's see.
There we go. Ari, -1 to level up. She has been she's champion players. Some players really love, and she's not been good for a little while. We're hoping decreasing her level up, letting her get to that level 2 a little sooner, will help you play her more often as a 3 health unit, buy a little less, and just be more satisfying to use. don't want to see Ari Kennen return to its extreme dominance in the old days, but hopefully this will make it an option for people that really love the archetype that can do well and get that positive win percentage.
Yeah.
Awesome. And that concludes our balance live stream. Just a couple of things. Patch notes will be out tomorrow at 10 a.m. I mentioned earlier, but we have a lot of really cool Path of Champions things coming. We have a few skins, so make sure you check out those patch notes. Once again, shout out to the Real Prism Sword. We did a really big deep dive about Aurelion Sol, our first 4-star champion coming to Path of Champions. So please go ahead and check that out. Aaron, do you have any closing remarks? Anything you want to say to our captive audience?
Yeah, I want to reiterate that this one is definitely a team effort for a patch. We had 4 people that worked on it total. John and I had to split time working on it. Once again, I appreciate that. So really, if you love the patch, everyone on the team collaborated. It was awesome. I'm happy to see how it turned out. And if you really hate the patch, it's all John's fault.
Yes, agreed.
Closing remarks, John?
Yeah, I just thank you all for playing so much. It's awesome to get to design these cards for y'all, come back, make changes to them, and get to look at them all again. Yeah, and go play Megatusk.
All right, y'all. So I'm actually going to raid one of our awesome community members. Y'all really make this community what it is. I love being community manager for you guys. And so please stick around and support the person that we raid. Show them some love. Let them know that Legends of Runeterra as a community supports them. So I'm going to go ahead and start that raid and go send them some love, you guys. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next live stream. Oh, wait, it needs 10 seconds to ready the raid. Okay, I'm going to put on the closing card. Don't leave. Go say hi to our friends. Bye, we appreciate you.